What is up, everybody? This is the Wild Nutrition Podcast. I'm your host, Chris Heskett, and this is episode 79. Today's guest is Alex Allen. She is an online coach, just like myself, and she's been coaching for about 10 years. She's going to talk a lot today about becoming the best version of yourself and learning to love yourself, along with her own journeys and struggles. So a lot of how she coaches is through storytelling of her own journey. So she has battled through, one, she became a firefighter before being a coach, which is cool as fuck. But she's also deals with PCOS and a few other things that we talk about on today's podcast. So expect a lot of stuff related to mindset and overcoming challenges today. And without further ado, here's Alex.
Perfect.
What's up, Alex?
Hello. How are you doing, Chris?
I'm good. I'm a little tired because I was up from 2 to 4 with my daughter last night, but I'll let you do most of the talking. So if I stumble for words, it's because I'm in a little bit of a brain fog today. I'm not 100%. But welcome. I'm super happy to have you on the podcast. Tell the audience a little bit about yourself and kind of how you got into lifting and becoming a coach and running your business.
Yeah. Well, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here. I know it's a little delayed. And and so I got into coaching, online coaching, technically 2021, early 2021.
Mm-hmm.
And then I've been a personal trainer for almost 10 years, which is absolutely wild to say. I've been a personal trainer and group fitness coach for almost 10 years. And so basically, obviously, pandemic happens, life shuts down. So you're kind of like, what do I do? And that's where I kind of transitioned. And you asked what I do. That's what I do, pretty much.
Yes, that's what you do.
I always get distracted. And I'm like, what was the main question? So I don't ramble. I can ramble.
You are more than welcome to ramble here. I try to do less talking and let you do more. But what got you into lifting in general? Did you do sports early on, or was this something in your 20s magically you're like, nope, I'm lifting now?
The funny thing is I failed PE in high school. So I actually was not very, and I kind of played sports. I did cheerleading and I did lacrosse, but I was naturally good, which made me almost lazy and not push myself to be great. And so when I got into college, I did what everyone does and gained the freshman 15, which in my case was the freshman 40. Oh. And yes. And I actually ended up, my boyfriend at the time actually passed away from a drug overdose. And so that led me to a very big life realization of what am I doing with my life? I did not do drugs, but it was this whole other thing. I've never done any drugs, so put that out there. But yeah. But then I was like, what am I doing? And it got me to just join a boot camp class pretty much and be like, okay, let's try this. I think this is something that people do. And I was also obviously in college, so I had no money. And so I was like, let me get a Groupon. I think that was cool then. I'm old.
Back then, yes.
Back in the day. That was 2013 for anyone who's wondering. Or actually 2012, I think. And then pretty much I just started doing group classes and running. And that's what got me into being active. The group class got me into lifting, where they did some dumbbells and stuff, and the instructors were bodybuilders, bikini competitors, and I was like, what is that? And so I was so mesmerized by it, and I ended up joining a 24-hour fitness that was near me. And once I joined, they were like, oh, you get a free complimentary personal training session. I was like, oh, first of all, I'm a child. I can't, I'm in college, so I can't afford this. So don't try and sell me, for one. Two, I'm trying to become a personal trainer just because I'm interested in it. So I was just trying to get my NASM, and I was like, I'm just going to learn from this. And they ended up calling me actually. And they were like, oh, you're trying to get your personal training cert. And I'm like, yeah. And they're like, we'd love to talk to you. And I'm like, oh, nice. Okay. And I go in for a conversation, and I was very blunt and honest. I was like, I don't know much. I'm still in school. I don't know what I'm going to do. And they were like, hey, we'll teach you. And so I actually ended up shadowing the fitness manager for about 3 months. And he what the interesting thing about that is I learned more from that than I did from my NASM cert.
Yes.
Because he actually had his bachelor's in science and kinesiology and had a great years of experience. And so I learned a lot from him. I ended up passing my NASM cert and I became a personal trainer, and I got to like work with new clients. They would help me with everything, like understand programming. And that's kind of weirdly enough, like it sounds like I skipped a step, but I didn't. It was literally like I kind of got thrown into this and I started like learning as I went. And what got me into actually lifting heavy was the gym that I went to, a lot of firefighters went to, and a lot of like people who were going to school to become firefighters. And I was like, that's what you do? Like you go to school to become a firefighter? That's so interesting. And they were like, yeah. So I was like, oh, let me try it. So I went to school, I got certified as a firefighter. And obviously, like, it's a very physically demanding job. And so, like, while I'm going through the school, I'm like, wow, I need to get significantly stronger. So I started training very differently. I got into like powerlifting, but also like some functional aspects. And that's basically what got me into like lifting, like truly lifting.
Nice. So
Yeah, a
firefighter is
lot there.
there's a lot there. The firefighter, I saw that you put that on your bio. I'm like, that's very interesting. I did not expect that at all. But
Most people don't.
no, did you do a lot with that? Like, did you actually work as a firefighter after
I
school
was a
or?
cadet with a company, or with not a company, with San Mateo County. And so that was in Northern California. And it was an interesting experience. I was compared a lot to a former female firefighter who like worked for their department actually, because we're very similar in the fact that like when I was going through school, I was so competitive and I would do whatever had to be done to like be the top of my class. Which is ended up being like spending a lot of hours outside of the school, like working. And when I started working, it was the same thing. Like I was so driven and I was just very competitive. Like I know that I work really hard and I'm not afraid to say that, but I was compared to her a lot. And unfortunately, she ended up dating a fellow firefighter, kind of got like a bad reputation from that. And it was clear that that kind of bad taste in their mouth from her experience was kind of being put onto me.
Hmm.
And I didn't really like that. And then there was some incidents with a battalion chief there who was basically just trying to be like what's a nice way of, I don't know. He made inappropriate like comments and stuff. And when I did come forward, because again, I'm not really afraid to say anything. That's always how I've been. When I came forward and I was like, hey, like that's not okay. I was basically like let go from the program. And the kind of crappy part is when I left, I actually talked to Central, which is like it's really close. It's like next door pretty much to where San Mateo County was.
Mhm.
Um, and I talked to Central and the chief, oh God, I feel awful because I can't remember his name for the life of me, but he was basically one of the chiefs that like worked with us in the fire academy. And he was like one of my favorites. He's a very no BS kind of guy. And he was their training chief at that time. And I like went to visit and say hi. And I was just like, hey guys, like, how's it going? And I'm like, yeah, I'm actually going to like kind of like leave this field. I don't know what I'm going to do yet. And he was like, come work for us. And I was like, no, the bad taste is there. I'm so sorry. And it really was like that bad of a taste in my mouth where I was just like, I think there's another way that I can help people and I just don't know it yet. And so that's kind of the interesting thing of what kind of led me to where I am now, I guess, which is like I've always wanted to help people. I just never knew how I was going to do that. And firefighting was a great way to teach me discipline, like a
Mhm.
physical discipline that I never truly had, because again, I didn't have that discipline in sports. So I was so passionate about like wanting to be the best and actually wanting to pass these classes and be able to help these people. So I like showed up to the best of my ability and it taught me true physical discipline. And I already had a lot of discipline when it came to like education and trying to like learn and everything. So it taught me a lot. But that's kind of the long ass story again of no, I didn't really like work in that field much. It was very, very short lived when I did. And I don't think it's a bad job by any means. A lot of the people that I used to work with, I still call my brothers. Like they're like some of the nicest people I've ever met in my life. And I don't think firefighters are all evil. It was just a bad experience for me. And another interesting thing that I was faced with a lot, even in the academy, was basically being told a lot that like, don't be myself, because I'm a very friendly, outgoing person who's very spunky.
Mhm.
And some people can view that like the female chiefs and captains would actually like come to me and they would be like, hey, like you can't be too friendly with the guys because then like the women are going to feel like intimidated, like their girlfriends, their wives. And I was like, I have a boyfriend. I'm like, I don't like any of these people. I'm not going to date any of them. And I was like, I don't want to talk to any of them. And they were like, no, but that doesn't matter. So it was kind of like, don't be yourself. And that was kind of another big factor that was like weird for me, where I was like, oh, well, I want to be able to be myself and help people.
Yeah.
So
It's interesting.
wasn't for me.
No. It's interesting you put, so one of my clients, she has the podcast Sparky Life, and she's an electrician now,
Oh,
but
wow.
her podcast is all about bringing people, women in the trades on and teaching about that. But one of the big things is the 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 bias, or
Mm-hmm.
I'm blanking on the words, but women are intimidating going in those fields because
Mm-hmm.
just takes one or two men to like ruin it for them, kind of like you had
Yeah.
there. So they talk a lot about that and like overcoming that and how to like not have that kind of stuff go on in the
Mm-hmm.
trades and ways to change it. Cause like she
Mm-hmm.
brought up like bathrooms, like they don't even have porta potties at some sites. It's just like go out back, and she's like, that's not cool for me. Like
Yeah.
that needs to change. So it's also like bringing awareness. Like I didn't know about a
Mm-hmm.
bunch of things like this,
Mm-hmm.
and who would know that like outside of like I'm not a firefighter, I wouldn't know that goes on.
Mm-hmm. It's one of those things where like it's kind of funny watching like Chicago Fire, the TV show, because like everyone's hooking up with everyone. And I'm like, you're not like supposed to do that. And I'm like, it's not like, I mean, like, it's not like it can't, I guess, but like it gives almost like a bad perspective of it, because then that's what people think happens. And I'm like, this is where like perspective always, but I always think that it's really fascinating when men and women can't be friends, and like people
Mhm.
don't know how to be friends with the opposite sex. And I'm like, something along the way of your life has taught you that it is not okay to be friends with someone of the opposite sex, when it should be. It teaches you a higher level of respect and understanding for your partner and for the opposite sex. So it's kind of like, I think that's extremely important to note, because that was one of the problems with a lot of the people who were older in the areas that I worked, or the areas even that I like would visit, where because of their thought process, it was like always hypersexualizing women. And I'm like, hey, how about we don't do that? And I'm like, that's a really great way to like not have women work for you.
Yeah.
Because even in my fire academy, there was one other woman. That was it. So it's like, I wish there was more women. But it sucks because like maybe they have a similar experience that I do. And like, again, it just ended up not being for me. So I didn't stick with it. But it's
Right.
like, I think other people can. And I appreciate that a lot of women still, like, when I do mention it randomly, people are like, wow, I didn't know that. And then people will reach out with like questions. So I always try and make sure that I'm encouraging, because I don't want people not to do it. For me, again, it just wasn't for me.
Right. Wasn't the right fit for you.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that was why I got into coaching. Like I wanted to be and help people and be in like the sciences, and I love working out and health, but I
Mm-hmm.
didn't want to be in the medical field. Like I
Yes.
married someone in the medical field. But I personally, I'm like, the last thing I want to do is be in a hospital. Like that sounds like hell to me.
Yeah.
Hence, like went to school, got a degree in exercise science, and then it's like strength conditioning cert, and now I'm a coach. Okay, that was not the route I was expecting, but here I am, and I get to help people, which
Mm-hmm.
dev just kind of like meanders, like go in the right direction, just not the direction you thought.
Yeah. It's good to be malleable.
Yes, and flexible in life, because if you don't like change, it's going to be really hard for you to go through life.
Oh, yeah.
I've worked with a few clients like that. Like I don't like change. Like oh well, that's too bad. That it's going to
We have
happen.
to, yeah, we have to teach them that change is okay.
Yes,
And like, we have to have them do things that show them that change is okay.
change is scary. So the scariest part with change is always like the unknown, like the
Mm-hmm.
not knowing the future, and that's for a lot of people. That's where like anxiety hides out in the unknown of the future. Like oh,
Yeah.
I don't know what's going to happen, so I don't like that.
Yes.
Versus maybe we just like look at the present and then make a
Mm-hmm.
plan, and then the future's less scary.
Yeah. Pretty much.
That
Doesn't have to go with the plan. You're still not gonna know how it's gonna turn out, but you gotta just
no,
go roll,
but
go
at
with the
least
flow.
you have a plan to kind
Yeah.
of like guide you through it, instead of like going through it with blinders on. Like I hope it turns out for the best, and maybe it does,
Like, who
maybe it
knows?
doesn't. Yeah,
Yeah.
kind of like a flip of a coin there. So you were an in-person trainer. Pandemic happened, switched to
Mhm.
like online coaching.
Mhm.
How's that going for you?
It's great.
Awesome.
Yeah, I have my team, LWA Coaching, stands for Lives with Alex, but like I'm not the only coach, so that's why I try and be like LWA Coaching. We may have a rebrand coming. We haven't decided yet, but
Nice.
that's on its way. But it's going really well. I'm very grateful for the community that we've already built in general, like clients or not, because we stand very firm on the fact that we want to be able to educate people, and so we do our best to provide a lot of free resources, and then we
Nice.
also obviously make sure that our coaching is extremely high level. So we're always looking to try to elevate it or enhance the client experience to make sure that they can reach their goals and again have like a fun time doing it, because I think fitness doesn't have to suck.
Let's dive into that because a lot of
Okay.
people think so. This is
Mhm.
my thoughts on it. A lot of people think like diet and exercise needs to be. Did you ever watch the movie National Treasure?
Of course I did.
Yeah. So in the first one, the monk that's like he's like whipping himself. I feel like that's what people think diet and exercise needs to be. Like
The
just
monk that's
sadistic.
I feel like now I need to like rewatch
You,
this because I'm like the
there's
only
a
thing that I remember from National Treasure is the quote where
oh no
he's
no
like,
no not National Treasure.
okay, great.
Oh crap! It came out around the same time. It's not National Treasure. I think it's the one with Tom Hanks. It's like with the Declaration of Independence. No, that's National Treasure.
I was like, that's
I
National
am
Treasure.
I'm totally blanking on this right now. Thanks, sleep deprivation.
And I'm usually a big movie buff, so I would help you, but I don't even know what you're
I
talking about
am
now.
totally blanking it. And I'm gonna like Joe Rogan this, like the Jamie thing, and like try to look it up. But I feel like people need to be very like sadistic or masochistic with their routine, like as hard as
Mhm.
possible, as miserable possible, and then they hate it and burn themselves out. So like,
Mhm.
what does fun look like?
So I think it's almost like two parts because one, I think the fun is going to be a little bit different than also being able to be consistent or like not having to hate yourself while you're doing this. And I've actually had, I think, 5 conversations this week with current clients who either work with me or like other coaches who have said, like, I never knew that I could feel this good and it could be this easy. And that to me is the definition of sustainability, because again people think that it has to be this terrible thing where your whole life is uprooted, and I'm like, well, it really doesn't, and you don't have to have your life revolve around the gym, as funny as those like videos and things are when people say that, but it doesn't have to be like that. And for it to be fun is like do something you legitimately enjoy, which like people find such a wild concept. But I'm like, if you don't love lifting, guess what? You don't have to do it. Is it maybe better for your goals? Yeah, it'll probably get you there a little bit faster. Or maybe let's compromise. Let's do it like twice a week. And then like other days, you do something else you enjoy.
Yep.
And it's like, it's this wild concept where people are like, oh my God, I don't have to go to the gym 5 days a week. Wow. And I'm like,
Crazy, right?
yeah. I'm like, what a concept. Or when we tell our clients, like, hey, yeah, maybe like this week, 10,000 steps is super unrealistic. Just aim to go for a 10-minute walk every day. And like
Yeah.
so many clients, especially when they start with us, because like the unfortunate thing for us is a lot of the clients that we get have usually already worked with somebody else and had a very bad experience. And I wish we get them when they're like new to it, or not necessarily fully new to lifting, but like new to the coaching experience. And they're like, oh my, they're blown away by it. Instead of coming in being almost like traumatized by their previous coaches. I have people who say that like their coach just ghosted them. And
Yes.
like, and I'm like, first of all, what the heck is wrong with that person? And I'm like, you are supposed to be working with these people at bettering their health, and you're literally just like not talking to them. What?
Wild.
Um, and then also it's like they have coaches who tell them like, oh, well, you're just not trying hard enough, or you just need to figure it out. And it's like, how is that even helpful?
The coach is supposed to help you figure that out. I had a
Yes.
conversation with someone where she had a coach that yelled at her because she had roasted almonds instead of raw almonds. Not like honey roasted, just regular sea salt roasted almonds. I'm like,
Yelling in
did you
general is never
fire
acceptable as
her
a
on the
coach.
spot?
Yes.
Because why?
Yeah, no, yelling as in general as a coach is like super inappropriate and should never happen. That's the thing that shouldn't happen in most communication.
Yeah.
So there's that. And yes, I hope that coach was fired on the spot.
She wasn't, unfortunately, but
Oh,
she never went back. She like
good.
ran through
She
the
learned.
contract and never went back to that person. I'm like,
Yeah.
yeah, that's terrible.
Yeah, that's not okay. So that's kind of how I view it. I was like, fitness should be fun, health should be fun. Like, that's the other thing too. People think that like meal prep has to suck. And I'm like, well, why don't you just like do it with your friends or like turn on a podcast or turn on some music? Like make it like a date night. Like make it like a fun experience. It doesn't always have to be this miserable thing. And also like meal prepping doesn't have to mean that you're just eating chicken and broccoli with no seasoning.
Right.
And like I literally just sent like 20 recipes to one of my clients who was like, hey, I'm kind of getting bored of stuff. And I was like, hey, like what about these? And it's like there's like shakshuka, there's like different pasta recipes, there's like tons of different options. And I'm like, hey, like, do any of these sound good? She's like, I can eat all this. And I'm like, yes, of course you can. I'm like, of course you can.
Yeah, don't make meal prep suck.
Yeah.
We do like a lot of times our meal prep, it's whatever Sunday night dinner is, we just make a massive dinner. And then we do like some sort of like crock pot, slow cooker type meal on Wednesday. And that's the remaining meal prep. It's not
The
like a
secret to meal
dedicated meal
prep.
prep day. Yeah, it make it work. That works for our schedule. So we do that. And it's not extra time because I used to do the thing where it's like on the Sunday, you would go grocery shopping, then you
Oh
come
God.
home
It's like this
and
whole
you,
ordeal.
yeah, and then you lay out all your Tupperware. And it's like, great. After cleaning up all of this, it's 6 p.m. It's time to start dinner. And then it's going to be time to go to bed and go to work. There went my entire Sunday.
Yeah. The little like secret that people don't know, meal prep is just a fancy word for leftovers.
It really is. It really is. I'm going to steal that one. That's just leftovers, guys.
It's literally what it is.
Yeah.
You're intentionally making leftovers.
That'll be a conversation. I'm like, what did you make for dinner? They're like, well, we made chicken and rice. And okay, why don't you just make up like the whole packet of chicken? What?
Yeah.
Like the whole family, there's your meal prep. And it like blows their mind. They're like, I never thought of making more than one serving.
A lot of the stuff is like it's staring you right in the face, but we just don't think about it. And like there's nothing wrong with that. Like a lot of us aren't it's not what we're taught to think about. It's not what we've ever like considered in our lives. Like we're like, oh, like we make our food and we eat our dinner and then that's it. So it's like a lot of these thoughts are like it seems so obvious when we say it, but it's completely understandable why it's not in the moment.
Yeah, definitely. Speaking of which, found the movie. It was the Da Vinci Code.
So, okay, I haven't seen that. All I know
You
is there's
haven't.
like a fish or something in a newspaper. Oh wait, I think I've read like a spoof book on it.
I'm like,
Is
that
it?
sounds like a spoof book.
I was okay. Yeah, no, I haven't seen it.
Okay. So you would not get that analogy, but there's
No.
like a monk in there and he like it like to punish himself for his sins, like whips himself. And in one scene, it's like, well, that's what people think
No.
of fitness. But I agree. So I use a lot of like unconventional fitness tools when I was in person training, like steel
Mm-hmm.
maces, steel clubs, and we would get people where I worked, people who just didn't like lifting, didn't like the gym. But then I put it like give like a 45-year-old woman a steel mace, and all of a sudden they feel like Xena, the warrior princess, and they're like,
Yeah.
they look forward to coming to the gym, and it'll only be one small part of their workout,
Mm-hmm.
but it makes it so much fun that they look forward to coming to the gym every day and like getting their hands on that tool. It's like, great, we'll get a lot of like your squats and your bench and push-ups and rows and all that stuff in, and then for the last 15 minutes have fun with this. And they're like,
Yeah.
yes, they get through it, they push themselves, they're making, then they get to that, and then they're like, what's next? Well, you have to get stronger to go up in weight. So then they're pushing themselves with the stuff they
Yeah.
don't like. And it was like one of those things, I'm like, man, like these tools, like they're not the secret, but for a
Mm-hmm.
lot of people it is their secret because it makes it fun.
Yeah. 100%.
I've had another client where she hated lifting, but she was smaller. She was like 125, but was competitive in jujitsu. So trying to
Oh,
like
fun.
get her to
Strength up and everything.
strength up. So is you have to lift. But
Mm-hmm.
instead of 4 days a week, it'd be like, well, with jujitsu and everything, we're going to do 2 days a week, total
Yeah.
body. And then she saw like, okay, now I'm doing better in jujitsu. So now I'm more
Mm-hmm.
motivated, even though she hated it. It motivated her because her jujitsu game was going up and she was doing better in
Good.
competitions.
That's awesome.
Make it fun.
That's all it takes.
It is. It doesn't need to be treadmill workouts and weights unless that's what you like.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's tough because like my background's bodybuilding, powerlifting. So I'm like, That is what I like. I like going
Mhm.
in the gym and lifting. So sometimes people are like, I don't like that. And you have to get a little creative. Like, okay, what things do you like? Do you like um going for a hike? Awesome. Maybe that's your cardio. Like we'll throw like a heart rate monitor on you and you're gonna go for a hike and maybe throw some weights in your backpack.
Mhm.
Easy.
Yeah. It's that, and then also we have to I feel like we have to constantly remind people too, like just because I do it doesn't mean you have to do it.
Yeah.
I did a whole post on macros yesterday. Like I was like, macro tracking isn't inherently oh gosh, it's not inherently, oh my God.
I think I saw it. It was like leads to eating disorders, like
Yeah, it's
disordered
not
eating.
inherently disordered eating.
Yeah.
I was like, why is my brain now my brain's doing that? I was like, it's that afternoon slump. But yeah, it's like in macro tracking isn't inherently disordered. And very like right away, I had someone comment and they were just like, unless you are planning on stepping on stage or doing something like that, you should never track macros. And I was like, you clearly did not watch the whole video. Because I go
No.
on to say, this isn't suggesting that everyone should track macros. It's not suggesting that no one should track macros. It's saying that it's a very unique thing. It's a tool that can be abused just like anything else in the world.
Mhm.
And I think it's so important to recognize that like so many people are so quick with their opinions that they have the blinders on too. Like
Yeah.
it's confirmation bias.
Mhm.
They're like, I want to see the thing that I want to see, and then that's it. And I'm like, well, we should learn to live in more of a gray area. And that's where a lot of people really struggle, is being okay with the gray. And that's like everywhere in the fitness world. It's like
It
people think,
is.
again, every day I have to go to the gym. I can't eat carbs. I can't do this. And I'm like, once you start saying the like ultimatums, or like, this is like, again, like the all or nothing mindset, that's setting you up for failure. It's putting you in a position where you now are assuming that if you do those things you say you can't do or shouldn't do, you are now a bad person or you're now a failure. And then that leads you down that spiral or that yo-yo where you're just like hating life and hating yourself, which just isn't fair.
Right. And then that
So
affects your identity. I know that Jared
yeah.
Hamilton goes over this a ton, but I had a client where she would just call herself lazy. And I told her, I'm like, you're not allowed to say that word ever again. Like, you're not allowed to
Mm-hmm.
even think it. Like, you can't say, like, I'm a lazy person. Cause then she would go and, like,
She identifies
I'm,
that way.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
oh, lazy people don't work out. So I identify as lazy. So I don't
Mm-hmm.
work out because lazy people don't work out. It's like, maybe we should change that. You're not allowed to say that word ever again. And then all of a sudden she's like, oh my God, I didn't realize like I was self sabotaging myself.
All
Yeah,
the time.
all the time. And we
That's why I
don't
love
realize we're doing it.
journaling. I
Yes,
love journaling because you get tired of your own shit. If you no, but seriously,
it's true.
if you regularly journal and you tell yourself like, oh, I'm tired of doing this, or I'm always doing this, or I need to do this, enough days in a row of you being like basically complaining to yourself about the things that you're not doing, you get tired of your own shit. And you're like, I need to make a change. That's
That's a
it's
new way to reframe journaling. I like
like
that a
it's
lot.
funny because people are like, oh, I get tired of journaling. And I'm like, you get tired of journaling because you're tired of hearing your own shit. You're like, I say the same thing every day. Great. Why are you saying the same thing every day? Get
Do something
curious
about
about
it.
it. Yeah. And I'm like, it was my friend actually said this the other like this past week actually, and it's been ingrained in my brain ever since then because I just think it's funny. But she was like, I would never want to be on your bad side. And I was like, but I'm never like mean. And she's like, that's the scary thing. You're never mean, you're just honest. And I'm like, well, yeah, it's not my job to like tell somebody like call up someone names or something. But like if you're gonna keep complaining about something, I'm gonna ask you about it and be like, well, why do you keep complaining? And I just sit there and I just listen because I'm curious, because I care about you, but it's scary. People don't like to hear the truth. And you don't want to hear it from yourself,
No.
especially.
You don't want to hear from someone else. And as coaches, we know that when we're getting on like calls with people and they're just kind of trying to get like a confirmation bias of you're
Yeah.
like, oh no, we can change all this. What do you mean? No, like
Yeah.
I am supposed to be stuck the way I am. Like,
That's
nope.
funny. The client call I was on right before this, she was like, oh, I just feel like I don't have like that many like wins. And I was like, okay, great. What do you think that, and we had literally just gone down a list of things that she had just done like incredibly well. But then like it's not like where I'm saying like, oh, this is a win or this is a win. I'm just like letting her like share the things she's done really well. And I'm like listening and I'm like, that's awesome. Like, I'm super proud of you. And I'm like, you should be proud of you. And then she goes on to be like, oh, but I just don't feel like I have any like wins. Like, I feel like I'm still like struggling so much. And I was like, okay, totally understandable. So what wins or changes in your life do you think you have made that have made a positive impact? And then she slowly starts like list them all. And I was like, oh, interesting. Do you feel like you have some wins now? And she's like, oh, you're right. And I'm like, yeah, I am. But I'm not going to tell you that you're winning. I'm not going to tell you all these things because, like, I can't tell you the great things you're doing for you to believe it. You have to see it and you have to believe it.
Yep.
So what's up,
People like to focus on the negativity rather than like, you've done amazing. It's not good enough. I'm not where I'm supposed to be. Like, maybe we should take a moment and live in the present rather than like always looking at the future of like, I could be better.
We
No.
live in a society that's trained us to do that.
Yes.
So like, and I think that's the important thing to like remember, because we see it all the time. And I see it a lot where coaches get annoyed. You obviously very clearly weren't, but I'm saying like other coaches will get like annoyed because they're like, oh, they're so negative. They're like, this person's so negative. And I'm like, we grew up in a society to be trained to be negative. Like, we hear the news, which is always something bad happening in the world. Even on social media, the stuff that gets like clicks or whatever is always drama. I literally, right before this, someone sent me a post and they're like, oh, what do you think of the comments? And I was like, what? And I like go look at the comments, because a lot of times comments on posts are fucking hilarious.
They're
so I was like,
so
oh,
funny
what
some
is
days.
it? Then I go look and it's like all this like drama stuff. And I was like, I don't care about this. And they were like, oh, why not? And I'm like, because the more you're filling your mind with these things, the more you're ingraining that that's the stuff I want to talk about. And again, it's the same thing with negativity. And you have to take time to train yourself to not be negative or to not hyperfixate on the negative things. That client I was just talking about, literally her next goal for this next week is every single day, celebrate a win. And
that's
it's like,
awesome.
but that's what it takes. It's this, you need reps, just like training. You need reps. Like, how often do you actually stop and be like, I'm a fucking incredible human being? Because people hear that and they're like, oh, she's conceited. She thinks so highly of herself. And people are quick to be negative about it. But like, I just think I'm fucking incredible. I think I'm a great person. I work really hard to be a good person. I deserve to be excited about that. So it's like, but then how often do you do that? I'll ask people, when was the last time that you actually said something nice about yourself? I'm asking. It's a
question. Audience. For me,
for you.
For me, it's maybe once a week I say that to myself.
Why not more?
That's an excellent question. Probably because I am so like scatterbrained right now.
That's fair.
With everything going on with my daughters. But I do try to like do gratitude journaling. I'm off and on with it, but I do try to do that. And that helps me with being more positive rather than focusing on the negative. But I also do like just like refuse to go on to like certain apps or certain places or just like unfollow certain things that just bring negativity into my life. Like, I don't watch the news. I literally did a post about this week of like, you want to remove stress from your life, like a ton of it, just never watch the news again. You can get all the headlines 5 minutes out of your day on an app. If you need to read anything, great, but you'll remove all this negativity. I do not read. I have a Twitter. I don't really use it, and I refuse to go on it anymore because, I would get sucked in. I'm like, I just spend like 30 minutes reading all these comments, and they're just negative, and I don't feel good. Like, I just feel like, ugh, I didn't learn anything. And same thing with like my other social media profiles. I'm like, if this is just bringing negativity in, remove, unfollow, see less of, so that I'm just getting what is actually like going to be beneficial to me, my business, and my clients, and my family, versus like, why would I follow this person? I'm like, why does this person have a following? It's just negativity left and right.
I'm really glad that you recognize that, because that's one of the hardest things. A lot of people feel like they're being a bad person or they're doing something wrong. It's like, no, you're just setting boundaries and it's okay.
Yeah. And a lot of toxic things like to get a lot of traction. Like a lot of comment sections you'll go in and they're just toxic. And you're like, yeah, I just shouldn't be here. I'm just going to ignore this and go on with my day because this is terrible. Like people are, like you said earlier, very quick to just like first 15 seconds, just dump a mean comment on there without like any, like, they don't know you. They've never seen any other content from you. They're just going to leave a quick comment like that thing what you said with macros. Like, well, what's the solution then? They never give a solution. They're just like, boom, no, solve this absolutely, like, what's the solution? And then it might be something like fasting, but fasting is also terrible for some people with disordered eating patterns. We have these like 3-day, 5-day water fast. You think someone Like my wife, who has a history of disordered eating, would do good on that. No.
Yeah.
And back to like macros, I tell my clients when they're getting a little frustrated with it that everyone, like when they come in, they want to learn more about nutrition. And I say,
Hmm.
what's the best way to learn about the food that you eat on a daily basis? They're like,
Hmm.
oh, tracking macros. Yeah, you're going to actually learn about nutrition, calories, protein, carbs, fat. And if we go with chronometer, you can then learn about your micros as well. Your what
Hmm.
is high in vitamin C, what's high in magnesium, things like that. Why would we just like, why would I give you like a random textbook and you never eat beets, but here's the breakdown for beets. My wife hates beets, which is why I brought it up. Like, it's that's useless information versus like you love, say, kale, and you eat a kale salad multiple times a week. Maybe you should know the nutrition for that.
Hmm.
Great, now you know. It's a nutrition education along with like helping you reach your goals.
Knowledge is power.
It is.
Yeah, I love
Um,
that.
So the other thing with you that I find interesting, and we talked a little bit off camera, is that you have
Oh,
PCOS and something
sure do.
my wife has. We have clients who have it, and quite a few people in our community have PCOS. So, what some advice that you can tell the audience, or even my wife, to help them reach their weight loss or health goals?
Um, so there's a couple things. One of the biggest ones being find a great doctor. So find a doctor who's actually going to listen to you and have like real conversations with you. I say that on purpose because doctors get such a bad reputation, unfortunately, because there are a lot of like bad experiences that people have with them. But having a really, really great doctor who's like actually advocating to get like real lab work done, who like wants to have real conversations with you and like understand your symptoms can be very helpful. And like I never pretend like I know more than a doctor. I always make sure that like people understand that like, hey, I am very well educated in this space. Again, I don't know more than a doctor. And so I want to work with you and your doctor. So in that way we have a deeper understanding of things. So that's honestly one of the big things that I'll like say, because I'm like, hey, like I still think it's important. From there, also understanding that progress is going to be slower than you want it to be. Um, you we definitely talked about that because it's one of those things where because of the way that PCOS presents itself, trying to rush the process will leave you more frustrated and more it can even potentially push you further back. So it can actually exacerbate your symptoms even more. Like as I was sharing as well, basically like when I was first diagnosed, I got post-pill PCOS. So I came off of hormonal birth control and that's when like my PCOS like really flared up. I actually like got it confirmed, which I think is another important thing to say because a lot of times people are like, I think I have PCOS. And then I'm like, have you ever gotten like labs done? Have you ever like actually tracked your cycle? Have you ever seen if you actually have any cysts in your ovaries? Like, have you ever done these things? And then people are like, well, no, my doctor just said I have it. And I'm like, well, why? And it's not to belittle them and not to sound like I don't believe them. It's so they can get more information because that's again, knowledge is power. If you've
Yes.
never gotten your labs done, like, great, let's do it. If you aren't aware of your cycle, like, track it. And it's like, that's also one of the biggest things that we talk about with like pretty much all of our clients is like, we educate them on tracking their cycles. We work with them to like figure out like where they're at in their cycle initially. So then that way we can then actually get real data on like, what do your symptoms actually look like? What is like a normal period for you actually look like? Because a lot of people with PCOS, like even now I've been like, quote, like fine for
Mm-hmm.
like probably 6 months now. So it
Okay.
took me about a year to get into like a good place after coming off hormonal birth control. But in the past 6 months, my period is typically like 31 to 34 days. It was like
Okay.
34 days on the dot for a while. Now it's 31 days, which to a lot of people is long. And I'm like, because average is 28. And I'm like, yeah, but it's normal for me. And that's what's like so hard for so many people to understand is like your normal is going to look so different than somebody else's, and that's okay. I know I gave a lot more things, but I have like one more thing that I want to say that I'll like add to like what people need to know. You do not have to have shitty PMS symptoms. You shouldn't have shitty PMS symptoms. And if you do with your PCOS, which is very common, it can get better you do have to be willing to do the work, which sometimes means doing less. And like, that's again, very hard for a lot of people to understand because it's like, they want to do more. They're like, I want to lose weight, so I need to go to the gym more. I want to eat less. And I'm like, it's worse for you if you're eating less. Like, you're probably actually more inflamed. Like, I know for a fact for me, even now, like if I go too long without eating, like I'm not pretty regular with like 2 to 3 hours or like maybe 4 on the high end, I start to get like a very round face and I start to get really inflamed pretty quickly. And
Interesting.
like, yeah, I'm just my blood sugar is just like I tank. It's like I'm very sensitive. So that's a big joke too, is I'm just a very sensitive being, but that's a whole other thing. But I would say those are the main things to very quickly condense them down. It's like, get a great doctor who actually cares, and it's okay to get second, third, fourth opinions if you need them. Get educated about what labs you should get done and get them done. Track your cycle so you're actually aware of your symptoms. Be okay with it taking longer than you want it to.
Yes, it is a much slower process. If as coaches, like the standard like thing you say is like you can lose zero point 0.5 to 2 pounds per
No,
week.
God.
Yeah,
Not with PCOS.
you're on the 0.5. Like
Yeah.
that's going to be the norm, not the range there. It's like the 0.5. Like live,
And
you're
sometimes
going to
you
be with
can't go
that
in a
or
weight loss
slower.
phase. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I was about to say, sometimes you can't.
Yeah.
And that's okay. Like, again, like my experience was I had to spend about 4 months eating, like, I mean, I spent roughly like 3 weeks eating this way. And then it was a total of 4 months, like still being very cautious, but it was like 3 weeks of I got to go to the gym, I was very excited to get to go. Like 3 days a week. My RPE, or like my intensity in the gym, was like a 5 out of 10. And I had to eat Mediterranean diet pretty much. And that was like it. No alcohol, I don't drink. I haven't drank in 6 years. So that was pretty irrelevant. No caffeine. I love me some coffee.
Ooh.
So it was like a lot of like reducing inflammation, a lot of just trying to make sure that my body was just operating to the best of its abilities. I can manage your stress. Like, you gotta, like, that was another thing that I had to do that a lot of people don't really realize, is they think that they're going through life totally fine. I'm like, when was the last time you took like a deep breath? Um, but I did that for about 3 weeks, and then it was like 4 months of still being pretty on top of things. And then I finally got to like introduce other things back. And again, it took me a year before like my body, like, because I could tell emotionally and mentally like I was off. My mindset just, it never felt right. And it's one of those really hard things to explain to people, because you're like, I don't feel like me. I don't feel as happy. I don't feel as like there fully. Like, there's so many moving parts, and then you get to the root and you're like, oh, this is why. Okay. And you kind of just have to deal with it, which is the crappy thing. You're trying to like try things at the same time, but you're like, knowing that you're not alone with it, I think helps a lot.
Yeah. And if you're in a community, kind of like sounds like your community, it can be helpful with other people who are going through the same thing that you
Mm-hmm.
are, where, oh, I'm not crazy. Because a lot of times,
Mm-hmm.
PCOS, it's getting diagnosed more,
I know.
which is good or bad. Like
Quick
sometimes
to
it's maybe a
diagnose.
little over diagnosed, but sometimes you feel like when you get a diagnosis with something like PCOS, where you have to do less, you have to slow down, like
Mm-hmm.
you can kind of feel like an outsider sometimes
Mm-hmm.
compared to everyone else. Like if you have a bunch of gym buddies and they're going hard and you're like, I get to go at like a 5 out of 10. Yay. I
Yeah.
miss those hardcore leg days. Like I told you off camera, like my wife's before the wedding, it was
Oh
weight
gosh. Yeah.
training 4 days a week, kickboxing 3 days a week. She's a nurse. And I think there are a few other things in there. It was like going hardcore. And it's like, why couldn't the scale drop? And she had a professional bodybuilder helping her with her diet. Because again, I refuse to coach my wife anymore. And just not good for our relationship. Um,
Understandable.
so it was like, why are she lost maybe like 5 pounds total over like a 6 month period? Like, what the hell's going on?
Mm-hmm.
Then it was like afterwards, she got the diagnosis. Like, okay, this literally explains everything. Like,
Yeah.
why is it like you can gain weight so easily? She also has hypothyroidism. Why can you
Oh
gain weight
shit.
so easily? And then
That'll do it.
why can't you lose the weight at all? PCOS plus hypothyroidism
Yeah.
combined. Lovely. This is fun.
Yeah. And it's an interesting thing too, because I actually have a client who one of the hardest things we've been doing together is getting her okay with actually trying for herself. Because what happens is, I feel like when you spend so long thinking that nothing works and thinking you're just doing all the wrong things and you're not seeing the progress you want, you ask yourself, like, what's the point?
Yes.
And it's so disheartening because, as like a coach, like, well, if we do these things, it actually should help. And like, these are the things that we've been taught. Like, I went through like a functional health like course, and I'm like, okay, like we have an understanding of like what to do. And obviously I can't guarantee anything, but like, it's worth trying. And it's with this client, we've been working specifically on just going on more walks. Like, she actually gets like 1,500 to 2,000 steps a day, just because that's like her like busyness of work. And we're like working on trying to increase it. And it's been one of those things for like about a month or two. It was like, there was a disconnect somewhere. She was starting to eat more, which was awesome. Food and everything was in a way better place. And like, her relationship with food was way better, but there was still like a disconnect with movement. And we finally got on a call, and I was like, hey, like, so what's going on with like going to the gym or like going on walks? Like, what do you like? Is it not exciting to you? What can we do to make it something that we can get done? And she goes, well, I just don't see the point. And I was like, okay, like, why? And I'm like, we can talk about it more. And she's like, well, no, I've just tried everything for almost like 10 years. And so I'm like, well, what's the point? And I'm like, I completely understand where you're coming from. And I can't say that like I've obviously been in that position, but I can say I've been in a point where it felt like I was doing all the right things and nothing was going the way that I wanted. And it hurt and it sucked, and it made me not want to keep going. But also, trying things this different way that you actually haven't tried yet, like, what's the worst that could happen? And she's like, you're right. And I'm like, yeah, because it's like, you've tried all these other things and obviously they haven't worked. So what if we tried something else?
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean you have to give up on yourself. And again, like, it's one of the hardest things in the world, which is like not give up on yourself when you keep getting faced with like everything like not going the way you want. But again, like, it's either you give up and you stop forever. Like, the only way to guarantee that you will fail is if you stop trying.
Mm-hmm.
That's it.
You can't fail if you don't stop.
Yeah.
And I always say it's kind of like it's clients who come in and they kind of have one foot out of the door.
Oh,
They're
before
like,
they even started. Yeah.
yeah, it's like they're like, close the door behind you and just go all in on this. Don't like stop like looking at all this other stuff. Stop listening to all these podcasts and just do the thing we said now. Because also I think a lot of people will listen to stuff that's like higher level stuff that they're not at. They're at like the
Yeah.
base, they're at level 1, and they're listening to things that are level 5. Like, okay, that the stuff you listen to with like the ice baths and the red light therapy and all this other stuff, like there's a point to it. However, you're not even tracking your food and getting 8 hours of sleep. Maybe we should start there and start getting walks before we talk about some like optimized lifting routine.
Yeah. It's like we need to master the basics
Yep.
first, and then we can move up. Also, I was looking up this quote from National Treasure. It's actually from National Treasure. So it's like always my favorite quote, and I always butcher it, so I always need to make sure I get it right. But it was like the whole like, what is it, the Thomas Edison quote that he says, because he's like, and it's I never once failed at making a light bulb. I just found out 99 ways not to make one.
Yep.
And I'm like, that's all. It's it. All it took was one way to make it right, but you just had to find it.
Yeah, and people are just so afraid of failing. I think this comes somewhat from like school, because school is like you either get the A or you get an F, and like
Yeah.
in real life, it's like you're gonna mess up a bunch. Like, you're a business owner, I'm a business owner. How many things have you done that are flopped? Like, you put your blood, sweat, and tears into something and it flops, and you're like, well, that sucked. Most people give up. Whereas it's more like, okay, like, let's learn from that. Let's never do that again. I just had something like that. I'm like, well, I'm never doing that again. That was not worth the effort. So let's learn from that. Stash that in the corner to bring out next time I think of that idea. Can be like, oh yeah, we tried that. Let's not do that again. And we can actually find like other avenues of stuff that works. Same thing with weight and nutrition and fitness. I hear like lifting 5 days a week. Yeah. I hear like lifting 5 days a week is optimal. Is it? Is that for you? Like, if you hate lifting, guess what? You're not going to stick with
That's
something that you're
not
going to do
optimal.
5 days a week. There
Yeah.
was a while where it was like some of the research was showing like full body workouts were like the optimal
Oh
thing.
gosh.
I'm like, I hate full body. And I would tell
Yeah.
people, it's like, yes, I understand. Like at the now, the research is different, but it's like at
Yeah.
the time, it's like I'm just not doing it because I put in like 70% of the effort versus like an upper lower split or a bodybuilding split. I put in 100% effort.
Yeah.
That's fun for me. Total body.
Find what works for you. That's all it comes
Yeah.
down to.
And that's same thing with the unconventional fitness stuff of put a
Mhm.
steel mace in someone's hand and they love it. And that's what great. Maybe on paper it's less effective than another program, but if that makes you consistent, you're going to beat out that person with the optimal training and nutrition program who hates it from day one. They're going to last maybe 30 days, if
Yeah.
that, probably less than 14 days versus you're going to do for the next year and a half
Yeah.
or longer.
Yeah.
Um, so you also, so random note, you
Okay.
moved from California to
Yeah.
Texas.
Hmm.
What made you move to Texas? Because I feel like a lot of people do that. It's just one of those things I'm like, okay, I gotta ask.
It's funny because I feel like my reason's different than what a lot of people do. Because I think a lot of people move because, well, financially, obviously, it makes way more sense.
Mhm.
It's just way more affordable here, for one. So that is part of the reason. But I actually really mostly moved for Alpha Land, which is surprising to a lot of people. It's basically this gym where a lot of like influencer people go. And it's funny, I will never call myself an influencer. I want to make that abundantly clear. When I moved, I had like, and like I hate using like follower numbers as like an example of anything, but like when I moved, I had like 20,000 followers or so. So it wasn't like I definitely wouldn't have classified myself as an influencer, and I still don't. But when I moved, it was mostly because I felt so alone in the fitness space. And I
Mm.
wasn't really a huge fan of LA, because I used to live there too, and I was like, this is a lot, and I'm not meant for this environment. But so I wanted to move to meet more online coaches and to like meet more people who like wanted to build their businesses. And the irony is, which I should have expected, I feel like it's a lot of like influencers who want to be influencers and not necessarily a lot of people who want to be business owners, and also people who really want to make the same kind of impact that I do. And there's nothing wrong, like whatever they want to do, as long as you're not hurting anyone, I don't really care. It's not my problem. What is it? Not my circus, not my monkeys. So I'm like, go for it. Um, so it was an interesting move. I don't love the heat, and it's humid as all get out here. And I miss California all the time. My family's in California. So I see myself potentially like moving in the future. I just don't know when, and I don't know where. I wouldn't say necessarily back to California, just because again, financially, hey, yo, it'll hit ya. Yes.
Yeah.
But so I moved to make friends. Ironically, didn't. And then we joined NCI, and then I made a bunch of friends here. So
NCI is a good way of making a lot of friends. I've like
yes.
pretty much everyone I talk to on a weekly basis is connected with NCI some way, somehow.
I still need to meet more people in NCI for sure, but I've started to like make more friends in it, and it's really exciting, and it's definitely like that's the environment that I'm like, I want to be around these people all the time.
Yeah, because we're kind of going through all like the same things, the same
Mhm.
struggles versus an influencer is going to have different struggles than you. Like you're not, even though you do have a pretty good sized following, they're looking at like, how do I get like 1 million followers?
Yeah.
Like you're like, I could care less. I just want to help people. And they're like, no, how do I get like super famous? And
Yeah.
you can still have impact that way. It's just a different
Mhm.
impact and different route. But there's a disconnect with like the lifestyle and the ways to do it. And like, oh, okay. It's more like an indirect way, whereas like you and I probably want like a direct impact in someone's life. Like I took
Yeah.
this person from this point to this person and point and changed their life for good.
Mhm.
That's amazing. That's what fuels me versus like, I guess the influencer would be like, no, like I'm impacting like a community as more like an indirect impact if that's their thing.
Yeah.
Still good, still important. I I'm not an influencer, so I don't get it. It's not my thing. Nor do I ever want to be like a big influencer. I couldn't imagine like dealing with that
What
many
life is
people.
like.
Yeah. I'm like,
Yeah.
no, thank you.
Yeah. So That's why I moved.
Cool. Well, where can people find you?
On Instagram and on TikTok, and I believe on Twitter, all under the Alex Allen. Sounds pretentious, but it's not. I just, Alex was taken, Alex Allen was taken, so I went with the Alex Allen. And I made it way before anything else. So they can find me on Instagram. We also have a Facebook group, and those are the main places you would find me.
Awesome. What's the Facebook group's name?
We're changing it. So that's why I was like, it just lives with Alex for right now. We just opened it up to like public. And so now people can come into it.
Okay. Send me it out if you're updating it, and then I'll put that in the show notes when this episode comes out.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
And then you have a podcast as well, correct?
I do. I need to get back to it. And that's what both you and Chris have reminded me. Not Chris. Oh my gosh, Chase. Like I'm talking to Chris right now. Technically there is Chris.
There is Chris with Chase. That was a fun podcast because 2 Chris's. Chase was like, I have to like differentiate you guys.
Yeah, it's like which one's which. But you and Chase have both re-sparked me getting back into podcasting. So my podcast is Born to Thrive.
Born to Thrive. Okay, awesome. So that's going to be down in the show notes, guys. Make sure give Alex a follow. Check out her podcast. Send her a message to get back on her podcast. And go check out her Facebook group as well.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. This was great. Hey guys, thanks for tuning in. Hope you enjoyed today's episode with Alex. Make sure you go down to the show notes and check her out. Give her a follow. Also, while you're at that, make sure you go and leave a review for the show. Drop 5 stars. Also, write a review, as that helps push the show out for more people to find it. Also, it's something that a lot of people will look at on like Apple Podcasts to see if the show is worth listening to. Also, a reminder that down below you're going to find a few links. One, if you don't follow me on social media, my links are down there, but also the 5-day fast fat loss course and the 12-week Rucking guide will be down there as well. Those are free programs for you. The 5-day fast fat loss course is me walking you through how I design programs exactly for clients. And the other one, the Rucking guide, is a great tool for those of you trying to improve your cardiovascular health with limited time.